The Ember Chronicles Part 11 of the Galactic War Saga. Throne of the Starforged. Chapter 1. Awakening the Starforged. The galaxy held its breath in the cold silence after the rift's reckoning. Stars flickered like distant candles in a vast cathedral of night, their light muted by the heavy shadow of war's aftermath. The Celestial Alliance lay fractured, scarred by battles that reshaped entire star systems. Worlds still bore the scars of the Leviathan's Gate, their skies streaked with fallout from weapons older than memory. Yet amid the fragile calm, something ancient stirred in the void. The Starforged, remnants of a power lost to legend, awakening from their eons-long slumber. Commander Kael sat alone in the command deck of the flagship Eclipse's Edge, the hum of the ship's engines a low, steady pulse beneath the vast viewport. His eyes traced the nebulae folding like ghostly curtains against the backdrop of endless stars. The memories of past conflicts pressed against his mind. The desperate stand at the Leviathan's Gate, the harrowing escape from the Celestial Ascendant's wrath, the shattered alliances that nearly tore the galaxy apart. Every victory had been a prelude to this moment, a shadow cast long before the light returned. A sudden alert broke the silence. Tactical sensors flickered with an anomaly detected beyond the Maelstrom Belt, a region already infamous for its unpredictable spatial distortions and drifting debris from shattered worlds. The readings showed energy signatures unlike anything on the standard galactic charts, pulsing, alive, as if the fabric of space itself was breathing. Kaelin's jaw tightened. The Starforged were no myth. Whispers from forgotten archives spoke of them as ancient architects, wielders of cosmic forces that could unmake stars or forge new worlds with a thought. The rift had only been a door. Now it was opening wider. He knew the galaxy was unprepared. The Eclipse's Edge surged forward, its engines burning through the void toward the unknown. Kaelin's crew moved with practiced efficiency, shadows beneath cold metal and flickering consoles. Among them, Lieutenant Mira Solon prepared the tactical arrays, her gaze sharp despite the exhaustion etched in her features. She remembered the first flames fall, the echoes that followed, and knew their fight was far from over. The Starforged were coming, and with them, a reckoning that would decide whether the galaxy bent its knee or burned to ashes. The Eclipse's Edge pushed deeper into the Maelstrom Belt, a chaotic stretch of space littered with the remnants of ancient wars. Jagged asteroid fields spun slowly in the weak gravity, fragments of forgotten battles frozen in time. Sensors struggled to keep a clear reading, interference scrambling data and twisting reality's edge. Kaelin stood at the viewport, the distant glow of a dying star casting long shadows across the bridge. The Starforged presence was growing stronger, a low hum vibrating through the ship's hull as if the universe itself was resonating with their awakening. It was a sound that seeped into the bones, cold, inexorable, filled with ancient power. Lieutenant Solon approached silently, her voice steady but tense. The new readings indicated something vast, something deliberately concealed within the swirling chaos of the belt. A structure, perhaps, enormous and unlike any known vessel or station. The data was fragmented, but unmistakable, an artifact of unimaginable scale and design, forged from star metal and pulsing with raw energy. Kaelin's mind flashed back to the ancient records buried in the Citadel during the last campaign. The Ascendants had spoken of artifacts left behind by the Starforged, relics capable of reshaping reality itself. Their warning had been clear. Such power was a double-edged sword. It could bring salvation or annihilation. Orders were given. The fleet tightened formation, warships bristling with weapons humming in readiness. No one doubted that the Starforged were no longer passive legends. They were waking, and the galaxy's fate would soon hinge on the Eclipse's Edge and her crew. Kaelin allowed himself a brief moment to remember the sacrifices of the Riftborn, those who had stood against impossible odds during the Leviathan's Gate. Their courage now felt like a distant echo, a call to stand once more in the gathering storm. Ahead, the artifact began to resolve from the nebula's veil. A colossal, crystalline spire suspended in the void, radiating light that bent space and time around it. The Starforged throne was not merely a myth, it was real, and it awaited its rightful heir. The first step toward the throne had begun. The galaxy was about to change forever. The crystalline spire pulsed with a rhythm that echoed through every system aboard the eclipse's edge. Energy waves rippled outward, distorting sensors and casting shimmering shadows that danced against the walls of the bridge. Kaelin's fingers tightened around the rail as he watched, a mix of awe and dread settling deep in his chest. This was no mere relic. It was a beacon, alive, awakening, calling to something far beyond. Lieutenant Solin's voice cut through the tension. Intelligence had begun intercepting encrypted transmissions in the outer sectors. Messages encoded in ancient Starforged script. Attempts to decipher them revealed fragmented warnings and fragmented histories, tales of the Starforged rise, and a power that could rewrite the cosmos itself. The memories of the celestial ascendants surfaced, their cataclysmic arrival, the desperate battles fought under burning skies, the sacrifices made on countless fronts. Each victory in those wars had come at a staggering cost, yet none prepared the galaxy for what lay ahead. Kaelin's thoughts shifted to his closest allies. Captain Rena Drax of the Obsidian Vow, a fierce tactician whose loyalty had saved his life more than once, now commanded a battle group en route to join the Eclipse's edge. Admiral Thane Karath, whose shadowy dealings in the outer reaches had long stirred controversy, sent a message hinting at hidden agendas linked to the Starforged artifact. As the fleet closed distance, whispers of rebellion and desperation rippled through the communication nets. Some factions sought to seize the Starforged throne for themselves, believing control of its power meant dominion over the galaxy's future. Others feared the very idea, recalling the havoc unleashed by the Riftborn and the Ascendants, and prepared to destroy the artifact before it could awaken fully. Kaelin exhaled slowly, the weight of command settling over him like a mantle forged in fire. The stakes had never been higher, and the path ahead was obscured by shadows deeper than any starless void. To face the Starforged, to challenge the legacy of the Rift and the Ascendants, would require more than courage. It would demand sacrifice beyond measure. The first move had been made. The game for the throne was underway. Chapter 2: Shadows of the Forgotten. The corridors of the Eclipse's edge thrummed with the quiet urgency of a crew bracing for war. Deep within the ship's labyrinthine hull, Kaelin Vera met with his senior officers in the strategy room, a place where the fate of entire systems was debated in cold light. The holographic map hovered between them, displaying the Maelstrom belt and the pulsing spire that now dominated every sensor. Fleets from 3 factions converged, each moving with calculated caution but unmistakable intent. Captain Rena Drax's message had arrived moments before. Her battle group was days away, but already engaging skirmishes with mercenary fleets desperate to claim salvage rights in the belt's treacherous fields. Admiral Thane Karath's communications remained sparse, but laced with warnings about betrayal and the shifting loyalties in the outer reaches. Kaelin's gaze lingered on the flickering symbols representing allied and hostile forces alike. The galaxy was fractured more than ever. Old rivalries reigniting, and new enemies rising from the shadows left by the Riftborn's fall. Lieutenant Mirasolin's voice broke the silence, steady and sharp. Intelligence had intercepted transmissions hinting at a secretive faction known only as the Obsidian Covenant. Their origins were unclear, their motives murky, but every report linked them to the Starforged artifact, either as protectors or as harbingers of doom. The name sent a ripple through the room. The Obsidian Covenant was whispered of in the same breath as the Celestial Ascendants, a shadow legacy from the wars long past, believed extinguished but clearly alive and dangerous. Kaelin's mind drifted back to the Citadel, where they had uncovered the holographic warnings of the Ascendant Elder, a spectral figure speaking of power and peril, urging restraint. That memory lingered like a ghost between the present and what was to come. Outside the strategy room, the eclipse's edge shuddered as distant explosions echoed through the void. The battle for control was no longer theoretical. It was unfolding in real time. Kael knew that every decision here would ripple outward, shaping the survival of millions. He took a slow breath and steadied himself. The Starforged were awakening, their power ancient and unfathomable. The galaxy's fractured players would soon learn that the true battle was not over territory or fleets. It was over the very soul of the universe. Chapter 3: Echoes of the Riftborn. The distant roar of collapsing stars still haunted Kaelin's mind as the eclipse's edge navigated through the shifting currents of the Maelstrom Belt. Every moment brought fresh reports of skirmishes, betrayals, and uneasy alliances forming like cracks in fragile ice. The Starforged spire pulsed ahead, a constant reminder of the stakes beyond mere survival. Lieutenant Mirasolin stood by the communications console, her eyes fixed on intercepted transmissions laced with cryptic references to the Riftborn, those ancient warriors who had stood against impossible odds during the Leviathan's Gate. Their sacrifices had shaped the course of history, their courage etched into the bones of the galaxy. Now, echoes of their legacy reverberated through the stars once more. A decrypted message revealed fragments of a lost prophecy, warning of a shadow rising from the Riftborn's ashes, a force neither fully dead nor alive, poised to tip the balance of power. Whispers spoke of a hidden faction, remnants of the Riftborn scattered in the void, operating in the shadows and waiting for the right moment to emerge. Kael recalled the bitter alliances forged in ashes of the Starborn, when trust was scarce and every victory exacted a price. The Riftborn had been both saviors and harbingers of ruin. Their legacy was a double-edged blade that now threatened to sever the fragile unity Kael desperately sought. The battle lines were drawn not only between fleets, but across the very fabric of loyalty and history. As the Obsidian Covenant moved closer to the spire, and the Starforged presence grew stronger, Kael understood that the past was not simply prologue. It was a weapon waiting to be wielded. The galaxy's fate hung in the balance, poised between the light of hope and the darkness of forgotten vengeance. The eclipse's edge sailed deeper into the shifting chaos of the Maelstrom Belt. The star metal spire loomed ever larger on the main viewport, its radiant glow bending space around it, fracturing the view like a shattered mirror. The artifact's hum pulsed through the ship, stirring something ancient in the souls of those aboard. Kael stood silent on the bridge, the weight of command heavy in his chest. His mind flickered to the Riftborn, their names spoken in hushed reverence and fear across every system. Once, they had been legendary warriors, wielding power drawn from the rift itself to push back the Leviathan hordes. Their stand had shaped the fate of thousands of worlds. But the Riftborn were no saints. Their legacy was tangled with sacrifice, rebellion, and terrible cost. Many feared their ghost still haunted the galaxy's edges, ready to ignite a final war. Lieutenant Mirasolin broke the silence, her voice measured but urgent. Recent decrypts revealed movement among scattered Riftborn factions, shattered cells operating in secrecy, striking from the shadows, uniting under a banner that none aboard the Eclipse's edge had seen before. Their motives were unclear, but their timing was ominous. Kaelin's eyes narrowed. The fragile alliances forged in ashes of the Starborn had begun to unravel. The Riftborn were no longer a memory. They were returning, and the galaxy might not be ready. Meanwhile, whispers from the Obsidian Covenant had grown louder. The mysterious faction had infiltrated supply lines and outposts, gathering knowledge and resources to challenge all who sought the Starforged throne. Their symbols, reminiscent of ancient ascendant glyphs, appeared like dark stains across battle maps, sowing distrust even among old allies. Captain Rena Drax's voice came over the comm. Her forces engaged in fierce battles near the outer belt. The mercenaries she faced fought with desperation, driven by promises whispered in the shadows of power, yet unseen. Every victory cost lives. Every loss threatened the fragile balance Kael struggled to maintain. The memories of the Celestial Ascendant's final assault haunted Kael. Their holographic warnings had spoken of a power that could remake the universe, but only at a terrible price. The Starforged throne was more than a weapon. It was a test of will and vision. Kael took a breath and faced his officers. The time for hesitation was over. The coming days would shape the destiny of billions. The echoes of the Riftborn were no longer distant. They were here. The war for the throne had truly begun. Chapter 5: Firestorm at the Maelstrom. The Maelstrom Belt was no place for the faint-hearted. Jagged asteroids drifted in slow, ominous arcs, their surfaces scarred by ancient collisions and new battles alike. The void was alive with tension, the silence punctuated by distant explosions, the hiss of energy weapons, and the crackle of communications lines stretched taut with urgency. Commander Kael Vera stood on the bridge of the Eclipse's edge, the flagship humming with restrained power as it sliced through the star-strewn chaos. The vast holographic map hovered before him, displaying the intricate dance of fleets and warships converging toward the Starforged spire. It was a battlefield unlike any other, where every move could mean salvation or annihilation. Captain Rena Drax's voice crackled over the comms, her tone sharp and focused. Her battle group was locked in fierce combat with mercenary fleets loyal to the Obsidian Covenant, their ships darting between asteroid fields like deadly shadows. The mercenaries fought with desperation, their weapons blazing in bursts of blue plasma that seared through space. Kael felt the familiar surge of adrenaline. Battles were never just about ships or tactics. They were clashes of wills, tests of resolve under crushing pressure. The Eclipse's edge launched its own volleys of photon torpedoes and ion beams, each strike aimed to cripple enemy vessels and protect Allied lines. Below decks, Lieutenant Mira Solon coordinated damage control teams, her voice steady as she relayed critical information. Fires raged in sections of the ship from stray blasts. Alarms echoed in the corridors, and the hull groaned under the strain of sustained assault. Every crew member knew the stakes. Failure here meant the collapse of the entire campaign. The maelstrom of battle swirled closer to the Starforged spire, its radiant core pulsing wildly, casting eerie light through the nebula's drifting dust. Sensors picked up strange energy fluctuations emanating from the artifact, as if it responded to the chaos, feeding on the conflict. It was no passive relic. It was alive and awakening. Kaelin's thoughts flicked back to the warnings from the Ascendant Elder, the holographic apparition whose voice had haunted the halls of the Citadel. The power they sought to control was ancient and unforgiving. One wrong move, and the galaxy could be consumed by a flame it never expected. Suddenly, the bridge shook violently. An enemy frigate had breached the outer defenses, firing a concentrated energy beam that tore through the Eclipse's edge's starboard hull. The impact sent sparks cascading down consoles, and emergency lights bathed the bridge in a crimson glow. Kael steadied himself against the railing, issuing orders without hesitation. Shields reinforced, countermeasures deployed, and targeting systems locked on the aggressor. The crew responded with practiced precision, a well-oiled machine forged in countless battles. Amid the chaos, Kael caught sight of a dark shape moving along the distant viewport. A small boarding vessel, racing toward the Eclipse's edge. The Obsidian Covenant had brought their fight close, and Kael knew the danger was far from over. His mind raced through scenarios. The boarding party could seize critical systems, sabotage weapons, or worse, unleash secrets hidden deep within the ship's databanks. Every second counted. The battle outside intensified, starships weaving and spiraling in deadly arcs. Ion blasts streaked across the void like lightning, illuminating the swirling clouds of cosmic dust. The maelstrom was living up to its name, a tempest of destruction and opportunity. Kaelin's voice rang out, steady and commanding, rallying his crew for the fight ahead. In the silence between blasts and alarms, a deeper truth echoed. The fight was no longer just for control of a throne. It was a war for the very future of the galaxy. The Eclipse's edge surged forward, shields flaring, weapons primed, heart beating in time with the Starforged spire's pulsing light. The firestorm at the maelstrom had begun, and nothing would ever be the same. Chapter 6: Aftermath of the Firestorm. The Eclipse's edge floated like a wounded leviathan in the eerie calm that followed the maelstrom's violent storm. Flickering emergency lights cast long, trembling shadows across the scarred hull and fractured bulkheads. The acrid tang of ozone and scorched metal hung in the air, mixing with the faint hum of cooling systems struggling to stabilize. Commander Kael Draven remained standing on the bridge, gaze fixed on the swirling expanse outside the viewport. The Starforged spire, now bathed in a softer, almost mournful glow, pulsed steadily as if digesting the recent fury. The battle had been fierce, ships destroyed, lives lost, but the artifact still stood, its enigmatic presence untouched and ominously patient. He could feel the weight of survival pressing on his shoulders. The victory was Pyrrhic. The fleet was battered, their strength diminished, yet the threat of the Obsidian Covenant had only deepened. Their boarding attempt had been repelled, but Kaelin knew the enemy's reach was long and ruthless. They were playing a longer game, and every scar on his ship was a reminder of battles still to come. Below decks, the ship's crew moved like ghosts in a silent waltz. Damage control teams patched ruptured conduits, medics triaged wounded soldiers, and engineers whispered frantic prayers as they coaxed life back into failing systems. The corridors were heavy with exhaustion and unspoken fear, but also with the determination that had carried them through countless perils. Lieutenant Mira Solon moved swiftly through the chaos, her expression set and unwavering. She stopped at the medical bay, where wounded were being treated beneath flickering lights and the soft beeping of monitoring machines. Among the injured was Ensign Kael Draven, a promising pilot who had narrowly escaped a crash during the boarding assault. His eyes fluttered open briefly, and Mira caught the faintest hint of a smile before he slipped back into unconsciousness. The costs of war were etched deep in every face aboard the Eclipse's edge, but Mira refused to let despair take root. The battle had revealed something crucial. The Starforged spire was reacting to their presence, awakening to the chaos. It was more than a relic. It was a sentient force, possibly even a trap. Kaelin's mind circled back to the warnings from the Ascendant Elder, whose holographic visage still haunted his thoughts. The Elder's voice had spoken of balance, a power that could either save or doom the galaxy, depending on who wielded it and how. Now, with the Starforged awakening and factions converging, the ancient prophecy felt more urgent than ever. In the ship's command center, Kaelin convened a council with his most trusted officers. Maps flickered with new data, fleet statuses, enemy movements, and intelligence reports intercepted in the aftermath of battle. Captain Rena Drax's forces had secured vital supply routes, but warned of increasing attacks by the Obsidian Covenant's covert operatives. Admiral Thane Karatha's shadowy influence was expanding, his motivations growing ever more inscrutable. The political landscape was shifting beneath their feet. Alliances forged in desperation began to strain under the weight of ambition and suspicion. Kaelin knew that holding the fleet together would be as challenging as defeating their enemies in combat. As the Council debated their next moves, a new alert pierced the tension. Sensors had detected an uncharted vessel approaching the Eclipse's edge at high speed. It bore no known insignia, its signature masked with advanced stealth technology. The crew tensed, weapons systems armed, and readiness protocols activated. The unknown ship hailed them with a simple message: an offer of parley and warning. They claimed knowledge of the Starforged artifact far beyond the Council's understanding and hinted at a secret faction older than the Riftborn and the Ascendants, watching from the shadows. This faction, they said, had shaped the fate of the galaxy for millennia and would not allow the Starforged throne to fall into reckless hands. Kael studied the message carefully, weighing trust against caution. The game was growing more complex, and the true nature of the enemy was becoming shrouded in layers of ancient power and hidden agendas. The galaxy was no longer just a battlefield. It was a chessboard where every move could awaken forces beyond comprehension. Kael knew this was only the beginning. The council chamber was quieter now, but the tension in the air was no less thick. Kael leaned over the holographic map, tracing the routes of allied and enemy fleets as his officers offered fragmented reports. The wounds of battle ran deeper than the physical damage. Trust had been eroded, replaced by suspicion and whispered doubts. Captain Rena Drax's voice cut through the stillness. Her forces had managed to secure the outer perimeter, but intelligence suggested the Obsidian Covenant was regrouping, striking deeper into Allied territories. Their tactics were brutal, leveraging sabotage and guerrilla strikes to weaken supply lines. Admiral Thane Karath, speaking via encrypted comm, offered his insight with measured detachment. He hinted at a hidden agenda within the Covenant's ranks, one that might extend beyond simple conquest. His cryptic warnings left the Council uneasy. Karath's allegiance was a question mark, and his actions often blurred the line between ally and opportunist. Lieutenant Mira Solin's analysis of the incoming parley message was cautious. The new faction they mentioned, the Veilborn, were unknown entities rumored in old legends but never confirmed. Their claim to oversee the Starforged legacy added a new, unpredictable variable to an already volatile equation. Kaelin's gaze lifted, meeting the eyes of each officer in turn. The battle for the Starforged throne was no longer a simple contest of fleets or firepower. It was a contest for control over a legacy that could shape or shatter the fabric of a universe itself. He felt the crushing burden of command settle on him. Every decision now carried consequences that rippled beyond the immediate conflict, echoes of past wars, shadows of ancient powers, and the fragile hopes of billions of lives. The room dimmed as a secondary alert blared. Sensor arrays had detected unusual energy fluctuations emanating from the artifact. The spire's pulse quickened, light fracturing in strange, spectral patterns across the void. Kaelin's voice was steady but urgent. Orders were given to intensify scans and prepare for rapid response. The Starforged throne was awakening faster than anticipated. Outside the ship, the remnants of the Maelstrom belt shimmered with uneasy stillness. The battlefield transformed into a silent graveyard of shattered vessels and lost dreams. But beneath the surface, currents shifted and new threats stirred in the shadows. Kael exhaled slowly, feeling the weight of a destiny still unfolding. A destiny that would demand sacrifice, cunning, and unwavering resolve. The war was far from over. The true storm was only beginning to rise. Chapter 7: Veilborn Shadows. The Eclipse's edge hummed with uneasy energy as the crew adjusted to the new reality. Not just of surviving the battle, but of facing an enemy whose origins blurred the lines of legend and truth. The message from a Veilborn had unsettled even the most seasoned officers. This secretive faction was said to predate the Ascendants and Riftborn, weaving in and out of history like ghosts shaping the galaxy's hidden fate. Kael stood on the observation deck, watching the stars blur as the ship repositioned near a fragmented asteroid cluster. Their temporary haven to regroup and interrogate the Veilborn envoy. The unknown ship, sleek and obsidian black, docked silently, its surface reflecting starlight like a shard of night. The hatch opened, and from the shadows emerged a figure clad in armor that seemed both ancient and impossibly advanced, adorned with symbols none recognized, but that resonated with a primal weight. The envoy's voice was calm, but carried the authority of millennia. They spoke of the Starforged artifact not as a weapon, but as a cosmic fulcrum, a balance point for creation and destruction. They warned that reckless use of the throne's power could unravel reality itself, fracturing the galaxy's very essence. The Veilborn had watched as previous factions sought to claim the artifact, their failures etched into the fabric of time like scars. Kael listened, torn between skepticism and the undeniable urgency in the envoy's words. The history he'd come to know, the sacrifices of the Riftborn, the rise and fall of the Ascendants, suddenly seemed threads in a far larger tapestry, one whose final pattern was still hidden. Lieutenant Mira Solin worked tirelessly to cross-reference Veilborn archives with intercepted transmissions. Fragmented holograms and ancient data cores revealed glimpses of a war that transcended time, a conflict fought not just with fleets and weapons, but with wills, minds, and realities themselves. Meanwhile, political tension aboard the Eclipse's edge simmered. Some officers saw the Veilborn as potential allies, guardians of a cosmic order. Others feared they were puppeteers, seeking to manipulate every side for their own inscrutable ends. Captain Rena Drax advocated caution. She had fought battles where friend and foe were indistinguishable until the last moment. Admiral Karath remained an enigma, offering cryptic counsel from afar. Kael knew that in the days ahead, trust would be as precious as firepower, and just as dangerous. As the Eclipse's edge moved toward the next phase of the campaign, the Starforged spire's pulse grew stronger, its light fracturing the void in unsettling ways. The artifact was awakening, but to what end, and under whose control, remained a mystery that could shatter everything they fought to protect. Chapter 8: Secrets of the Citadel. The corridors of the Eclipse's edge were thick with whispered speculation. The Veilborn envoy's warnings lingered like a shadow, seeping into every conversation and decision. Kael felt it in the steady tension in his officers' eyes, their readiness for the unknown that lay ahead. Mira Solin had uncovered a key piece of intelligence, a forgotten archive hidden deep within the Starforged citadel itself. Centuries old, it was said to hold records of the Ascendants and the Riftborn, their triumphs, failures, and the true nature of the Starforged artifact. This was the knowledge that had eluded even the most learned historians. As the fleet approached the citadel, sensors detected a sudden spike in energy, an eerie echo of power long dormant. The Eclipse's edge docked, and a boarding party assembled, including Kael, Mira, and a small cadre of trusted soldiers. The corridors inside the citadel were a labyrinth of shimmering metal and alien architecture, alive with a soft pulse that seemed to breathe beneath their feet. In the central chamber, a holographic figure flickered to life, the image of an ascendant elder, their visage both serene and commanding. The hologram spoke in a voice that resonated with timeless wisdom, recounting the history of the Starforged and their eternal duty to guard the balance of the universe. The elder warned of the consequences should the artifact's power fall into reckless hands. They spoke of the Riftborn sacrifices at the Leviathan's gate, sacrifices that had delayed catastrophe but not ended it. The power they sought was not a tool to wield lightly. It was a living force, capable of reshaping reality itself. Kael listened, the weight of history settling upon him. The legacy of the Riftborn and Ascendants was no myth. It was a burden he now carried. The artifact's true nature was a double-edged sword, and the choices ahead were fraught with peril. As the boarding party prepared to return, Mira examined a sealed chamber, its entrance etched with symbols matching those on the Veilborn envoy's armor. Inside lay a dormant device, humming faintly with untapped energy. It was a key, perhaps to unlock the artifact's full potential or to unleash devastation beyond imagining. The tension aboard the Eclipse's edge was palpable. The war for the Starforged throne was no longer just a battle between fleets and factions. It was a struggle for control over a power that could rewrite existence. Kaelin knew that the coming days would test their courage, resolve, and understanding of what it truly meant to be guardians of the galaxy's fate. Chapter 9. Shadows Unleashed. The Eclipse's edge had barely cleared the docking bay of the Starforged citadel when alarms blared across the ship. Sensors detected a massive energy surge originating from the sealed chamber the boarding party had uncovered. The dormant device, pulsing with a strange, otherworldly light, was awakening. Lieutenant Mirasolin raced to the engineering bay, coordinating with the ship's tech crews to analyze the energy signature. Their scans revealed a rapidly expanding field of energy, an unstable rift forming near the ship's core, threatening to destabilize both the vessel and the artifact itself. Commander Kaelin Vera's mind was a whirlwind of urgency and caution. The power they had disturbed was ancient and volatile, far beyond any technology or weapon they had encountered. The Starforged artifact was not just awakening. It was reacting to their presence, to their very touch. Across the fleet, communications crackled with reports of strange phenomena. Ships experiencing sudden system failures, unexplained gravitational anomalies, and flickering energy fields that distorted space and time. The Maelstrom belt was shifting again, alive with the unseen ripples of the artifact's influence. Captain Rena Drax's forces scrambled to contain outbreaks of sabotage and mutiny within their ranks. The Obsidian Covenant's agents exploited the chaos, their attacks growing more daring and coordinated. The war was escalating beyond mere skirmishes. It was becoming a battle for survival against an enemy that wielded the power of creation and destruction itself. Amid the turmoil, a secret transmission intercepted by Myra's team revealed chilling news. The Veilborn were not the only ancient faction stirring. Whispers spoke of a hidden cabal, the Starforged children, fanatics who sought to harness the artifact's power to reshape the galaxy in their apocalyptic vision. Kaelin faced a grim reality. The legacy of the Riftborn and the warnings of the Ascendants were not enough. The true battle was now a war against shadows, forces unseen but devastating in their reach. As the rift near the Eclipse's edge expanded, threatening to consume everything, Kaelin made a desperate choice. To contain the chaos, they would have to wield the artifact's power themselves, risking not only their lives but the fate of the entire galaxy. The firestorm at the Maelstrom had ignited a deeper darkness. The struggle for the Starforged throne was entering its most perilous chapter yet. Chapter 10. The Firestorm Unleashed. The Eclipse's edge drifted silently through the void, a lone beacon amid the swirling shadows of the Maelstrom belt. Inside, tension vibrated through every deck, thick as the stale recycled air. Kaelin stood on the bridge, eyes fixed on the shimmering rift that pulsed ominously near the ship's core. The artifact's power was no longer contained. It was alive, restless, demanding release. Lieutenant Mirasolin's fingers flew over the console, decoding streams of alien energy patterns that danced like living fire across the displays. Every spike in the rift's flux threatened to tear the ship apart, yet every attempt to suppress it only seemed to feed the growing tempest. Kaelin's voice cut through the controlled chaos. Orders came fast and hard. Engineering was to stabilize the containment fields at all costs. Shields were redirected to reinforce the core. Weapons systems stood ready. The crew's nerves frayed like the tautest cables. Outside the viewport, the Maelstrom's debris swirled, a graveyard of shattered vessels and lost hopes. But amid the ruins, distant flickers of movement suggested the Obsidian Covenant was massing, preparing for their final, brutal assault. They sought the artifact for themselves, oblivious or indifferent to the ruin it might unleash. Captain Rena Drax's voice sounded calm, but fierce over comms. Her battle group engaged the Covenant in a deadly ballet of fire and metal, plasma bolts lighting the void like storm lightning. Explosions rippled across the dark sea of stars, each one a scream in the silence. Back aboard the Eclipse's edge, Mira found a breakthrough. The device was responding to a specific frequency. Ancient code embedded in the artifact's design, a cipher left by the Ascendants. If unlocked, it might grant control over the rift's destructive pulse. Kaelin approved the risky maneuver. Mira and a small team entered the vault where the device sat cradled in magnetic restraints. The air hummed with latent energy thick enough to taste. As the code was input, the artifact pulsed brighter, the rift's edge thrumming with wild intensity. The ship trembled, a living thing caught between creation and annihilation. Suddenly, a shockwave blasted through the hull, throwing everyone off balance. The Obsidian Covenant had breached the outer defenses. Boarding parties clashed in brutal hand-to-hand combat through the corridors. Metal screamed, blaster fire echoed, lives shattered in seconds. Kaelin rallied his remaining soldiers, pushing toward the vault. The artifact's power flared wildly, illuminating the chaos like a storm's eye. As the boarding party closed in, a surge of energy radiated outward, a wave of light and force unlike anything the galaxy had ever witnessed. The rift burst open, spilling a cascade of spectral fire that warped space and time around the eclipse's edge. Moments fractured, reality bent, and echoes of past battles shimmered briefly before vanishing. In that suspended moment, Kaelin saw visions. The sacrifices of the Riftborn, the rise and fall of the Ascendants, the warnings etched into history's fabric. He understood, painfully, the terrible cost of the power they sought to wield. The artifact's glow enveloped him and the ship, a searing light that promised salvation or destruction. As the eclipse's edge hung on the precipice of oblivion, Kaelin made his choice. The final blast of energy cascaded through the maelstrom, shaking the stars themselves. Then silence. The void held its breath. Far beyond the reach of any fleet, a distant star blinked out. And somewhere, deep in the darkness, a new presence awoke. The war for the Starforged throne had only just begun. Subscribe and stay tuned for the next part of this galactic series.